Promoting your book as an indie author can feel intimidating. The idea of standing in front of a crowd, sharing your work, and hoping people show up, yeah, that's a lot. But what if I told you it doesn't have to feel overwhelming? In this video, I'm going to share everything I learned from hosting author events, doing my own readings, and even being on podcasts. So you can set up your first or next event with confidence and zero panic. From choosing the perfect format to finding someone to interview you and picking the best venue, and of course, preparing what to say. Plus, I've got a secret weapon, a unique way to make your event stand out and be memorable for both you and your readers. Here's a little bit about me. I hosted authors in conversation about their books when I worked at an indie bookstore. So I had the experience of getting to interview these authors, talking about their books, and seeing what those events were like on the interviewer side of things. I've also done several events for my own book, both being interviewed by someone and just being up there by myself. So that's not a ton of experience, but it's definitely more than I started with a couple years ago. The first thing to consider when you're setting up your event is if you want to do it just by yourself or if you want to be interviewed by someone. Having been on both sides of this, I will say it's infinitely easier to do an event where you as the author are being interviewed by someone else. As the interviewer, when I was interviewing other authors, I had to keep the conversation going, get the readers and the attendees at the event to kind of be more participatory in the event. And the author just kind of gets to sit there and talk about their book and talk about the work that they did. And it's just way easier for the author. They also can be a lot more fun for the attendees as well because they're watching a conversation and they can participate in that way versus just watching a presentation when it's just one person by themselves. That's not to say that doing an event by yourself is going to be bad. I've had great experiences doing my own events that way and also attending events where it was an author just speaking about their book without being interviewed. Those events can be most successful when it takes a little bit of practice ahead of time, getting your timing right, figuring out all the things you want to talk about, and kind of treating it more like a presentation. So you're not just talking about the story, you're talking about your research process, your writing process, what inspired you to write the book, and you just sort of package all of this up into a presentation that you are presenting to the attendees. So if you're brand new to events, I would highly suggest you find someone to interview you just to make that first one a little bit easier, a little bit less stress on your part. That brings us to the next point. Who can interview you? Librarians and bookstore employees are always a great start, especially if you have personal relationships with those people. If you are frequenting your library and bookstore like you should be as a good writer, you're probably going to meet some people. And, if you form those personal connections with people, oftentimes they're going to be more than willing to help you out with interviewing you for an event. Another option there is to talk to other local authors in your area, other writers, maybe if you're part of a writers group or a literary organization. Those are great places to find people who would be interested in interviewing you. And who is going to be interviewing you is also going to directly tie into where your event's going to take place. If you're being interviewed by a librarian, you're probably going to be in a library. Same thing for bookstores, but that's not always the case. I've had some very successful events at unique locations, one of which was a bar. There's a scene in my book that takes place in kind of a dark, dimly lit bar, and I found a perfect venue that was a dark, dimly lit bar in my city, and I just asked if they'd be willing to let me do an event there, and they were totally game. They'd never done something like that before. And it was really fun for the people who could attend as well because they can get drinks, they can get snacks. I've also done events at restaurants and community centers. So it really just takes getting a little creative and finding venues that you frequent a lot. If you know the owners or some of the workers there, you can ask them if they'd be willing to let you do an event. And most times business owners are happy with that because it gets people in the door, gets them buying their food and drink. All right, now for the big one. What should you talk about during this event? If you're going to be doing this as a solo event, you're just up there by yourself. Like I said, you can prepare a presentation. It's something that you're going to want to practice to make sure that your timing is right. If you're going to be reading a section of your book, make sure that you time it ahead of time. Time yourself reading it out loud, practicing it. And if you want to pick a section that you can leave on a cliffhanger, that's always fun. Also leave some time open for questions from the audience. But in either case, whether you're doing this by yourself or you're being interviewed, the kinds of things that you're going to be talking about are your research process, your writing process, what inspired you, how long did it take you to write the book, if you are working with an editor or an illustrator or cover designer, what was that process like? How did you connect with them? Basically anything that gives readers a look behind the scenes of how your book was put together in the first place. Now, what are you going to want to bring? Well, obviously copies of your book, unless you're holding your event at a bookstore, in which case they will probably be selling your book. If you are going to be handling book sales yourself, you're going to need to bring a way to take payment, whether that's a QR code that's hooked up to your online payment portal, a cash box or a Square reader or some other way to take payment for your books. That also means you're going to want to bring pens so that you can sign books for people. And if you have any stickers or bookmark or any other kind of swag that you want to give away, those are always great to bring too. Don't forget to bring a way for people to sign up for your mailing list, whether that is, again, a QR code or just a piece of paper that people can write their email addresses on so you can keep in touch with them in the future. Okay, and this is my favorite part. This is my secret weapon. This is something that's going to make your event so interesting and fun for you. It's something that you'll have fun looking through in the future, and it's really memorable for your readers as well. I got this idea from another author online who shared this from their own events that they did. And it's basically you bring a copy of your book and you have people sign it at the event. So while you are signing a book for them, they are signing your book. People will pick just whatever random page they want to sign on. Then you have this really fun memory piece that you can take with you to all of your signings, all of your book readings. It's pretty cute and fun. And I'll have to say, so many events I've been to as an author or as someone interviewing an author, most of the time I would have an attendee come up to me and say, I've never been to an author event. I've never been to a book reading and signing. I didn't know what to expect. And this was really great and fun. So that's another thing to keep in mind is that the attendees are just there to hear from an author. They don't have an expectation of what the event's supposed to look like anyway. So there's not really a way that you can go wrong. Let me know when your next author event is. And also let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk more about this. I love talking about author events. I love going to author events, whether they're virtual or in person. So yeah, just keep me posted.